The world was at peace, or at least that's what everyone believed. For decades, Earth had seen nothing but calm skies, bright days, and peaceful nights. Humans lived their lives in the comfort of their daily routines, unaware of the dangers that lurked beyond the stars. They had heard stories of aliens, of distant galaxies filled with strange creatures, but nothing seemed real. After all, nothing had ever truly threatened Earth. But that was about to change. It began with an unexpected sound. In the quiet of a peaceful morning, a low hum vibrated through the air. At first, no one knew what it was. People thought it was just the wind, a passing storm, or maybe even something in the atmosphere. But the sound grew louder. The ground seemed to shake, and the sky was filled with a strange, unfamiliar buzz. It was unlike anything anyone had ever heard before. As the noise grew louder, more and more people began to notice. At first, it was just a few confused whispers. "What is that sound?" Someone asked. "Is it an earthquake?" Another voice wondered. But the shaking didn't stop. It didn't feel like an earthquake. Not at all. This was something else, something far more terrifying. And then the sky was split open. A massive object, shaped like a dark metallic ship, tore through the clouds. It was enormous, bigger than any building, larger than any structure ever seen on Earth. Its surface was sleek and shiny, reflecting the sunlight in a way that made it look almost unreal. The ship moved without making a sound, gliding effortlessly through the air. It was unlike anything humans had ever imagined. It wasn't from Earth. It wasn't from anywhere they had ever known. As the ship descended, the air grew still. People stood frozen in place, staring up at the sky in shock. Some felt a deep chill run down their spines. Others were filled with confusion. They had heard the rumors. They had seen the movies. But this was real. This was happening. And it was happening now. The ship landed, not in the middle of a city, but in the remote countryside. It was as if it had been deliberately placed far from any major population, as if the beings inside wanted to avoid the chaos of the cities. Its landing was smooth, silent, and precise. The ground beneath it seemed to tremble as it touched down, sending a pulse through the earth that was felt by people miles away. The ship's doors opened slowly, and out came figures, tall, imposing, and alien in every sense of the word. Their skin was a deep shade of purple, their eyes glowing with an eerie light. They were humanoid in shape, but not quite human. Their movements were graceful, almost unnatural, as if they were used to traveling through the void of space. The world was silent, except for the distant hum of the ship. No one moved. No one spoke. For a long moment, all that could be heard was the wind whispering through the trees, as if it too was holding its breath. Then one of the aliens raised a hand, signaling for peace. A translator device on their chest hummed to life, and a voice echoed across the land. "We come in peace." The words were simple, but they carried weight. The message was clear, and the meaning behind it was even clearer. These beings were not here to negotiate. They were here to conquer. The world's leaders scrambled to respond. Military units were put on high alert, and defense systems were activated, but no one could have predicted what would happen next. They expected these visitors to be hostile, to immediately demand surrender or submission. But that wasn't the case. The aliens didn't make threats, nor did they immediately attack. Instead, they stood there, waiting, watching. It was an unnerving silence. Humans, in their confusion, debated what to do. What was the best course of action? Should they try to communicate? Should they prepare for war? How could they fight back against an enemy who seemed so much more advanced, so much more powerful? No one had the answers. Fear crept in, but there was something else too. Curiosity. Humans wanted to understand who these beings were, why they had come, and what their true intentions were. Meanwhile, the alien ship remained grounded, its engines still glowing faintly. The beings inside it were clearly waiting for something, perhaps for humans to make the first move. But the world waited in uncertainty. Then the message came again, not in words this time but in action. More ships, smaller, more agile, began to drop from the mothership, landing with precision and grace. The aliens began to spread out, their movements deliberate. It was clear they were not just visitors. They were scouts, setting up for something much larger. The world stood at the brink of something unimaginable. Earth had never faced a force like this. The conquerors had arrived, but humanity had not yet realized what they were truly up against. For the first time in history, Earth was about to learn that the universe was much bigger, much more dangerous than anyone had ever known. And humanity's survival would depend on how it responded to the arrival of these strange, powerful invaders. Would they surrender, or would they fight back? The answer to that question would change the course of human history forever. The world held its breath. As the alien ships continued to descend, the feeling of unease grew. Nations scrambled to establish communication. Command centers buzzed with activity. Satellite images were analyzed. Military strategies were drawn up, and diplomats were summoned. No one knew what the aliens wanted, but everyone understood one thing. This was no ordinary visitor. The human race had survived countless wars, natural disasters, and technological breakdowns, but nothing had prepared them for this moment. Here they were, staring at the unknown, facing beings that had come from the stars, with ships that defied all understanding. And yet, these aliens made no hostile move. They didn't shoot. They didn't threaten. They only stood, waiting, watching. For hours, the world's leaders remained in a tense standoff, their eyes fixed on the sky. Governments released statements about readiness and unity, but it was clear that no one knew what to expect. They were standing on the edge of a precipice, and no one knew whether they would fall or fly. Then, as if the aliens had anticipated this hesitation, they'd made their move. The translator device in one of the alien leaders' chest activated once again, and the eerie voice rang out across the land. "We do not seek war. We seek an alliance." The words were simple, but their meaning hit like a thunderclap. An alliance. The humans were caught off guard. How could this be? These beings, with their unimaginable technology, had come all this way, and now they were offering an alliance. The message didn't make sense. Every instinct told the humans that this was a trap. The idea of an alliance seemed too good to be true. But the alien leader continued. "We are the Xandor," it said. "We have conquered hundreds of worlds, but we seek a new path. We offer you a chance to join us. We can offer you technology, knowledge, and power beyond your wildest dreams. All we ask in return is your loyalty." For a brief moment, there was silence. The world's leaders didn't know how to respond. The offer was tempting, but their pride, their survival instinct, screamed against it. Could they trust these conquerors? Were the aliens truly offering peace, or was this simply a new kind of subjugation? In the midst of the chaos, one human voice stood out above the rest. A woman, a general, known for her tactical brilliance, spoke up. "No," she said simply, her voice steady and unwavering. "We will not bow to them." Her words echoed through the room. The leaders who had been unsure, on the fence about what to do, suddenly found clarity. Her defiance sparked something in them. A fire that had long been dormant was reignited in their hearts. She wasn't just speaking for herself. She was speaking for all of humanity. "You offer us loyalty," the general continued, "but we are humans. We do not surrender. We do not bow to anyone." Her declaration broke the silence. A ripple ran through the room, through the world. There was no going back now. The decision had been made. Humanity would not submit. But the aliens weren't done yet. The voice from the alien leader's translator device came again. "Understand this. We are not like your enemies. We do not seek destruction for the sake of destruction. We offer you survival. This is your last chance to join us. Refuse, and you will be crushed." The threat was clear. The aliens had made their offer, and now they had drawn the line. For a moment, it seemed like the world might crumble. The entire planet held its breath again, waiting to see what would come next. Would humanity back down? Would they bow before the power of the Xandor? Or would they rise? The silence was unbearable. Then it happened. A small, almost insignificant signal from Earth's distant defense systems caught the attention of the leaders in charge. Something unexpected had occurred. A human fleet, small but swift, had been deployed. And then the Xandor saw it. The stealth fleet. Unlike anything the aliens had anticipated, Earth's military had been working in secret. For years, they had developed technology that could rival the Xandor's, though far from as advanced. But they had something the aliens did not expect: stealth. The fleet was cloaked, hidden from the Xandor scans, and it silently circled the planet, waiting for the right moment. The Xandor, accustomed to being the ultimate force in the universe, never thought they would face a challenge from Earth. They had underestimated humanity. The cloak was dropped. Earth's fleet, with its cutting-edge technology and highly trained pilots, suddenly emerged from the depths of space, surrounding the Xandor ships in a perfect encirclement. A cold realization hit the alien conquerors. Humanity wasn't just going to lie down and accept their offer. They were ready to fight. The humans were not afraid. They would not back down. It was now clear. The Xandor had miscalculated. They had not expected humanity to have this kind of strength, this kind of resolve. The humans had chosen a different path. They had rejected the offer of alliance. And now, with the stealth fleet closing in, the Xandor had a new problem to deal with, a fight they had never seen coming. The first clash was sudden. There was no time to prepare. The Xandor had underestimated humanity's resolve, but now they were faced with the unexpected. A fleet of ships they had never seen before, cloaked and silent, and yet fully armed and ready to strike. The Xandor's advanced technology and overwhelming numbers meant little in the face of Earth's ingenuity. The humans weren't just fighting for survival, they were fighting for their freedom, for their pride. Every ship, every soldier, every pilot was determined to show the Xandor that Earth was not to be underestimated. Commander Sarah Mitchell, leader of Earth's stealth fleet, stood at the helm of the flagship, the Indomitable. Her heart raced as the battle unfolded before her eyes. Her fleet of 500 ships was now locked in battle with a far superior enemy. The Xandor ships, with their imposing designs and formidable weapons, towered over the Earth fleet, but humanity had something the Xandor could not match: sheer willpower. Stealth mode, disengage, Sarah's voice commanded. Her hand gripped the controls with unwavering determination. Let's show them what we're made of. The moment the fleet dropped from stealth, the full fury of the humans' might was unleashed. It was a sight that would be remembered for centuries. Human ships, small but fast, darting across the sky like angry wasps, striking with precision and agility. Earth's fleet wasn't built for large-scale engagements, but they had the edge in speed and tactics, weaving in and out of the Xandor ships' blind spots and launching powerful surprise attacks. The Xandor retaliated with terrifying force. Their weapons could turn entire cities into ash in seconds, but their arrogance had led them to overlook one thing. Earth's greatest asset was its unpredictability. The humans, despite their small size, had always adapted and overcome. Now, as the battle raged in space, the Xandor were about to learn that humanity could fight back like no one else. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Sarah's eyes never left the screens. Her fleet was striking fast and hard, but they had to keep moving. The Xandor were starting to adapt to the new tactics, and the humans could not afford to let up. Launch all fighters, she ordered, voice steely with resolve. Prepare for a full-scale assault. We're not letting them get the upper hand. The fleet's fighters, sleek and fast, shot out from their motherships, diving straight into the heart of the Xandor lines. The fighters were equipped with advanced weaponry, but it was their unpredictability that gave them the advantage. With no clear formation or pattern to their attacks, The Xandor found it nearly impossible to target them. As Sarah watched the battle unfold, she couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. Humanity, in the face of an overwhelming enemy, was not only surviving, they were fighting with everything they had. But it wasn't just the military that was making a difference. The people of Earth were united like never before. From the frontline soldiers to the civilians on Earth, everyone felt the call to action. Supplies, information, and even support came flooding in from all corners of the planet. This wasn't just a fight between fleets, it was a fight between civilizations, a fight for the future of Earth. The humans had one goal. They would not be the ones who fell. They would not let Earth become another conquered world in the Xandor's endless empire. In the midst of the chaos, Sarah received a message from her second-in-command, Lieutenant Carter. His voice was laced with tension, but also something else. Hope. "We've got them, Commander. They're starting to retreat. The pressure's too much." Sarah didn't allow herself to smile yet. The Xandor had underestimated Earth, but the battle wasn't over. There was still much to do. The aliens may have begun to retreat, but they wouldn't leave without a final strike, one last desperate attempt to break humanity's spirit. Sarah took a deep breath and steadied her hands. "Hold the line. We end this today." And so, the battle raged on. Humanity fought not just with weapons, but with heart and courage. Against all odds, they held their ground. The Xandor had made a grave mistake by underestimating the human race. They had thought they were just a species to be conquered, but they had forgotten one thing. Humans never give up. For every Xandor ship that fell, humanity's pride grew. Earth had shown that it could not be cowed, not by threats, not by numbers, and certainly not by arrogance. But even as they began to gain the upper hand, Sarah knew this was only the beginning. The Xandor might have been forced to retreat now, but they would not forget this defeat. There was still more to come, and humanity would need to be ready. As the battle continued, Sarah Mitchell glanced at the stars. For the first time in her life, she didn't see an enemy on the horizon. She saw a future where humanity would not be the ones to fall, a future where Earth stood strong, no matter what the universe threw at them. The battle in the cold void of space had stretched on for what felt like an eternity. Ships swerved, dodged, and exchanged fire, their once sleek hulls now marred by scorch marks and fractured metal. Commander Sarah Mitchell's hands gripped the control panel tighter as the momentum of the battle continued to shift. The Xandor had underestimated humanity's ability to adapt, but now, the question was whether Earth could hold this fragile advantage. The retreat was not as smooth as the Xandor had hoped. As they tried to regroup, their forces, once so certain of victory, began to falter under the relentless pressure of the human counterattack. Sarah could feel it. Their arrogance was cracking. The Xandor had never anticipated the humans could fight back this effectively. But even with their newfound edge, the humans still had a long way to go. One mistake could tip the scales back in favor of the invaders. "Commander, incoming message from Earth Command," Lieutenant Carter said, his voice sharp, cutting through the chaos of the bridge. Sarah nodded. "Put it through." The screen flickered for a moment before the face of General Evans appeared. The general's expression was stern, but there was a glimmer of something else in his eyes, something Sarah couldn't quite place, a feeling of cautious optimism. "Commander Mitchell," General Evans began, his voice steady despite the circumstances, "you've done the impossible. You've held the line. But we need you to push harder. The Xandor are regrouping on the far side of the sector. They're preparing for a counterattack, and it's going to be brutal." "I understand, sir," Sarah replied, her voice unwavering. "We've pushed them back, but we won't stop until they leave this sector for good." "We've been in contact with our allies," General Evans continued. "Our stealth fleet has disabled their communication networks, but we need time. Can you hold them off for just a little longer?" Sarah took a deep breath. This was it. The Xandor were not going to back down. They would regroup, And when they did, they would come at humanity with everything they had. But humanity had something the Xandor did not: unity. The Earth fleet, despite being vastly outgunned and outnumbered, was bound together by an unshakable will to survive. "I'll give them everything we've got. We fight for Earth today," Sarah said firmly. As the comms channel closed, Sarah turned back to her crew. "Everyone, listen up. We've got one shot at this. The Xandor are retreating, but they'll return stronger. We can't afford to lose this momentum. Launch everything we've got. We fight with everything we have, and we fight as one." Her crew, fired up by her words, scrambled into position. The bridge hummed with activity as each officer knew their role and played it to perfection. But Sarah knew the hardest part was still ahead. The Xandor were wounded, but they were still a formidable force. They had a single chance to break their will entirely. "Deploy all fighter squadrons," Sarah ordered. "Lock onto their largest ships. We hit them where it hurts." As the fighters screamed out of their motherships, streaking across the dark sky, Sarah kept her focus. Each fighter was equipped with the latest Earth-made plasma cannons and high-speed missiles, but the Xandor ships were armored with technology far beyond anything humans had ever seen. Still, every time a human fighter made a successful hit, Sarah could see a flicker of hope in the eyes of her crew. "We've broken through their flanks," Lieutenant Carter called out. "They're retreating again, Commander." But Sarah was not fooled. This was a temporary victory at best. The Xandor would regroup, and they would come back. The real battle was not yet won. In the distance, Sarah saw a flash, a larger Xandor ship breaking off from the retreating fleet. It was massive, unlike any ship she had seen before. The command ship, the heart of their fleet, had just initiated a warp jump. It was trying to escape, trying to abandon the battlefield. But Sarah wouldn't let them go. "Carter, lock onto that flagship. All remaining fighters, focus your fire on their command vessel. Do not let them escape." She could feel the pressure mounting. This was the decisive moment. If they let the Xandor flagship escape, the battle would turn in their favor once again. Earth's hard-earned progress would be undone. But if they destroyed it, if they ended the Xandor command, the enemy would have no choice but to retreat for good. As the fleet closed in on the flagship, Earth's last fighter squadrons began to strike in a synchronized assault, unleashing everything they had. Sarah's heart raced as the Xandor flagship shields began to crack. The battle was intense, but Sarah felt the tide turning in their favor. "Almost there," Carter muttered under his breath. Then the unthinkable happened. The Xandor flagship suddenly erupted in a blinding flash of light as it exploded, sending debris scattered across space. "We did it. We destroyed their flagship," Carter shouted, unable to contain his excitement. But Sarah didn't share his exuberance. Not yet. There was still so much to be done. The Xandor forces were now leaderless, but they weren't out of the fight. There were still many more ships in orbit, and they would continue fighting until the last one was destroyed. The remaining Xandor ships began to flee, trying to regroup, but their will was broken. With their command vessel gone, their forces were scattered, and their morale shattered. The humans had done what many thought was impossible. They had fought back and won. Sarah watched as the Xandor ships finally warped away, retreating from the battle. Her heart pounded in her chest as she took in the sight of the Earth fleet, battered but standing strong. "We've won today," Sarah said, finally allowing herself a breath of relief. "But we must remain vigilant. The war is far from over." The silence of space was almost unbearable after the battle. Earth's fleet, battered and bruised, remained in orbit above the fractured battlefield. The Xandor, once so confident in their superiority, had been dealt a devastating blow. Their flagship, the heart of their military might, had been destroyed, and their forces were retreating in disarray. But Commander Sarah Mitchell knew this wasn't the end of the war. It was only the beginning. "We've got their attention now," Sarah muttered to herself, watching as the last of the Xandor ships slipped into the folds of space, retreating into the unknown. The mission was far from over. The victory had come with a price, and Earth's forces were far from unscathed. "Commander Mitchell," Lieutenant Carter's voice broke through her thoughts. "We've received a message from Earth Command." Sarah nodded and motioned for the communication to be put through. A moment later, the face of General Evans appeared on the screen. His expression was one of grim determination, the weight of the war clearly visible in the lines of his face. "Commander, I won't sugarcoat it. You've made a dent in their fleet, but we can't afford to be complacent. The Xandor aren't finished yet. They're retreating, yes, but they'll regroup and come back stronger. We got a short window before they launch another offensive." Sarah clenched her fists. She knew it was true. The Xandor were not like any enemy humanity had ever faced. Their technology was beyond anything Earth had developed, and their military might was overwhelming. But they were not invincible. The humans had proved that. "What's our next move, sir?" Sarah asked, her voice steady despite the pressure mounting on her shoulders. General Evans hesitated for a moment before answering. "We need to track them down before they can regroup. Their fleet is retreating to a hidden base on the outer rim of the sector. We can't let them get there. We need to send everything we've got to take them out before they have time to rebuild." Sarah looked at the display screen. The battle was far from over. The Xandor had their forces scattered, but they were still a threat. The war was not over. It was simply entering its next phase. "We'll launch a full assault, General," Sarah said, her tone firm. "We won't give them the chance to rebuild. Earth fights for its survival, and we won't stop until they're defeated." General Evans gave a tight nod, and the transmission ended. As Sarah turned to face her crew, she could see the determination in their eyes. The battle had cost them dearly, but they were ready for what came next. "All right, people," Sarah called out, her voice ringing with authority. "We're not letting them regroup. All remaining fighters, prepare for a deep strike. We're going after their base, and we won't stop until they're wiped out. This is humanity's fight now." The crew worked in perfect sync as they prepared for the next phase of the war. Sarah knew that Earth was still vastly outnumbered, but it didn't matter. Humanity had proven its resolve. And now, they would make the Xandor pay for every moment they had made Earth suffer. As the fleet powered up, Sarah looked out at the stars, her mind racing with the weight of what lay ahead. They would hunt the Xandor down, wherever they hid, and strike before they could come back stronger. The time for hesitation had passed. "Commander, we're ready to launch," Carter said, breaking her thoughts. Sarah nodded, her jaw set in determination. "Then let's go." The fleet jumped into hyperspace, streaking across the vast emptiness of space towards the Xandor's hidden base. The mission ahead was clear: end the threat before it had a chance to regroup. But there was one thing Sarah couldn't shake. The Xandor had underestimated humanity before. She just hoped they didn't make the same mistake again. The vast expanse of space stretched out before them, a black canvas scattered with the faint glow of distant stars. But it was not the beauty of the stars that commanded Sarah Mitchell's attention. It was the mission. The deep strike against the Xandor's hidden base was humanity's last chance to end the war before it could escalate further. They had to move quickly, decisively, and without hesitation. "Commander, we've reached the outer rim of the sector," Lieutenant Carter's voice crackled through the comms. "Scanners are picking up faint traces of Xandor activity, but they seem to be covering their tracks." Sarah stood tall on the bridge, her gaze fixed on the holographic display of the enemy's base. It wasn't large, but it was heavily fortified, tucked away on a moon orbiting a barren planet. The Xandor had built it with precision, and it would not be easy to take down. Still, Sarah couldn't afford to waste time worrying about the details. The humans had come too far to turn back now. "Prepare for a stealth approach," Sarah ordered, her voice steady. "We cannot afford to give them any warning. Once we're within range, we attack with everything we've got. We'll hit them hard, hit them fast." As the fleet silently drifted through space, avoiding detection, Sarah couldn't help but feel a rising sense of unease. She had led her crew through countless battles, but this mission felt different. The Xandor were not a typical enemy. Their technology was advanced, their tactics ruthless. And now, after the humans had struck back with such force, they would be waiting for them. "Commander, the moon is in range." Carter's voice broke through her thoughts. "We're approaching their base now. All units, prepare for launch," Sarah commanded, her eyes narrowing as the display shifted. The base was heavily shielded, and the defenses were formidable, but they had no choice. They had to strike first, or they risked losing everything. "Launching strike drones now," Carter reported, and the ship shuddered as dozens of drones shot off towards the enemy base. The strike was swift, the drones carrying payloads of high-impact explosives designed to break through even the toughest defenses. Sarah's heart raced as the drones closed in. Suddenly, the base's shields flared bright on the screen, a clear sign that the Xandor had detected the attack. The drones collided with the shields, and for a brief moment, it seemed as though the assault would fail. But then, a flash of light illuminated the entire moon. "Direct hit. Shields are down," Carter shouted. The crew erupted into cheers, but Sarah remained focused, her mind still sharp. This was only the beginning. "All ships, move in," she ordered. "Take them by surprise. We've got one shot at this." The Earth fleet advanced, its ships gliding toward the enemy base at full speed. The Xandor, caught off guard by the surprise attack, scrambled to respond. Their own ships began to emerge from the moon's surface, launching counterattacks. "Incoming fire. Shields are holding," Lieutenant Carter reported. Sarah's grip tightened on the edge of her console. She watched as the human fleet returned fire, missiles streaking across the sky to slam into the Xandor's defenses. But even as they fought back, Sarah knew that the real battle lay ahead. This base was just a foothold. If they were to succeed, they would need to do more than just break the defenses. They would need to destroy the heart of the Xandor's war machine. "Commander, the Xandor flagship is emerging from the base," Lieutenant Carter shouted. "It's fully armed and looks like it's preparing to launch a counteroffensive." The flagship was enormous, a dark shadow against the cold, starry backdrop. It was bristling with weapons, and its size alone made it an intimidating force. But it was also the key to victory. If they could take it down, the Xandor would be crippled. "All units, target the flagship," Sarah commanded. "This is our chance. Take it down before it can launch a counterstrike." The battle intensified as the Earth fleet surged forward, taking on the Xandor flagship in a desperate fight for survival. The two forces clashed in a furious exchange of fire, the stars around them lighting up with the chaos of war. But despite the humans' fierce resistance, the Xandor flagship proved to be more resilient than expected. It was well armored and heavily armed, firing back with devastating force. Earth's fleet fought bravely, but the enemy's ship was a relentless force, and every strike sent shockwaves through their ranks. "Commander, we're taking heavy losses," Carter reported, his voice strained. "We need more firepower if we're going to survive this." Sarah's heart raced as she scanned the battlefield. Earth's fleet was in trouble, and the Xandor flagship was proving to be a tougher opponent than she had anticipated. But she refused to give up. She had led her crew through impossible odds before, and she would do it again. "Hold the line," Sarah shouted. "Focus all fire on that flagship. We're not giving up now." The human fleet poured everything it had into the fight. The weapons systems fired relentlessly, their payloads slamming into the Xandor flagship's shields, weakening it bit by bit. It was a slow, agonizing process, but Sarah knew they couldn't stop. Not now. Not after everything they had sacrificed. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the Xandor flagship's shields buckled under the onslaught. The flagship was exposed. "Target the core," Sarah ordered. The fleet unleashed a final barrage of missiles, and in one glorious explosion, The flagship was destroyed. The Xandor's strongest ship was no more. A cheer erupted across the fleet as the remaining Xandor forces began to retreat. The humans had won a crucial victory, but Sarah knew this battle wasn't the end. The war was far from over, and as the Earth fleet regrouped, she couldn't shake the feeling that the Xandor would return. The battle was over, but the cost was high. The once pristine void of space was now a chaotic mix of wreckage, abandoned debris, and the flickering remains of the shattered Xandor flagship. Sarah Mitchell stood on the bridge of the lead Earth ship, staring out at the aftermath. The stars were still as beautiful as they always had been, but they no longer felt as comforting. The victory was hard won, and the weight of the fight lingered. "Commander," Lieutenant Carter's voice broke through her thoughts. "The Xandor fleet has retreated, but we're picking up multiple signatures near the far side of the sector. They're regrouping." Sarah's eyes narrowed. She had suspected this. The Xandor were not ones to simply walk away after a defeat. "Prepare the fleet," she said, her voice steady. "We may have won this battle, but the war is far from over. We need to be ready." The crew worked quickly, moving to the order she had given. The Earth fleet, battered but unbowed, began to regroup. Sarah could see the damage from the battle on every ship, from scorched hulls to flickering systems. Yet, despite the odds, they had survived, and they had struck a powerful blow against the Xandor. "Commander," a voice called from across the bridge. It was Ensign Taylor, and she was holding up a data pad with an urgent report. "It's from Command. They've received our victory signal, and they're sending reinforcements. We won't be alone for long." Sarah exhaled in relief. Reinforcements were a blessing they desperately needed. Earth had fought alone for too long, but now support was on the way. She could feel the shift in the air. They were no longer a lone force struggling to survive in the vastness of space. They were a united front, with allies standing at their back. "Good," Sarah replied, her voice quiet but resolute. "We're going to need every ship we can get." The crew had already begun the process of making repairs, and Sarah couldn't help but notice the exhaustion in their eyes. It was more than just physical weariness. It was the strain of knowing that this victory wasn't the end. It was just another chapter in an ongoing war that was far from over. As she surveyed the bridge, she noticed Carter standing at his post, scanning the data feeds. "Lieutenant," Sarah said, stepping toward him. "How long until we're operational again?" Carter turned to her, his face grim. "It'll take a few hours to get our weapons back online, and we've lost some of our stealth capabilities, but we'll be ready to engage by then." "That's all we can ask for," Sarah replied, her tone hardening. "We're going to need to stay ahead of the Xandor if we want to win this war." The sound of heavy footsteps echoed down the hallway behind her. Sarah turned to see General Richards, the fleet's highest-ranking officer, stepping onto the bridge. His expression was a mixture of pride and determination. "Commander Mitchell," Richards said with a firm nod, "you've led your fleet through the impossible, and you've given humanity a fighting chance. We've received your report, and we're bringing reinforcements to your position. It's time to take the fight to the Xandor." Sarah nodded, but there was no triumph in her gaze. "We've won a battle," she said quietly, "but the Xandor are relentless. They'll come back, and when they do, we need to be ready." Richard's face softened, and for a moment, Sarah saw the weight of his years of service in his eyes. "We will be ready," he assured her, "but we've never fought a race like this before. The Xandor won't stop. Neither will we." The truth hung in the air between them. The Xandor were fierce, calculated, and merciless. But humanity had proven something that day. They were no longer the helpless underdogs. They had fought back, struck at the heart of the Xandor's forces, and survived. And now, with the promise of reinforcements and a new resolve, they would continue the fight. The silence on the bridge was broken by a distant rumble. It was faint at first, but it grew louder and closer, reverberating through the hull of the ship. The Xandor were returning. And they weren't alone. More ships appeared on the scanners, this time in much greater numbers. "Commander, enemy fleet is approaching fast," Carter shouted. "Braced for impact," Sarah ordered, her heart racing. The calm she had felt moments before was replaced by a surge of adrenaline. The Xandor had not abandoned their mission. They were coming back, and they were bringing everything they had. On the view screen, the Earth fleet and the Xandor forces locked in a final showdown. The stage had been set, and both sides were poised for the next phase of the war. "Prepare for battle," Sarah muttered, her voice a promise. "This is where we make our stand." As the Xandor ships closed in, the human fleet stood ready. They had learned to fight back. They had learned to survive. And now, with everything at stake, they would show the galaxy that humanity was a force to be reckoned with. The final chapter of the war had begun, and Sarah Mitchell and her fleet were ready to take the fight to the Xandor. The universe was watching, and humanity's future would be decided in the stars.